I'm playing something almost every week, and sometimes I want to talk about it. It's time for a quick hit review, or a vertical slice if you will. So stick with me for some lightning reviews. This week on the chopping block.
This past week, in the spooky month of October, I've been playing Little Nightmares.
I hope you appreciated that, because that's as Halloween-y as I'm getting. Alright, moving on. I didn't go into this game with the intention of actually playing this all the way through. I remember seeing screenshots and video snippets of other individuals playing it and thought that the grotesque creatures in the background would make for a good visual metaphor on an upcoming video that I'm working on. Believe it or not, I've actually attempted to play Little Nightmares in the past, but I put it down and walked away after about a half hour in because of some various control issues. But that doesn't necessarily mean a game is bad. One of my favorite games of all time, Mass Effect, had the same start. I began to play it, I thought it was really clunky, and I walked away. But then decided to go at it again, knowing a little bit better what to expect, and proceeded to be introduced to one of my favorite fictional universes. Opening background aside, there will be spoilers later in the video, which I will make abundantly clear once they start, so until then I'll be doing a relatively spoiler-free review. Upon initial impressions, this game appears to be one of those dark, borderline survival horror platformers. If you've played Limbo or Inside, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. A small, seemingly helpless creature wandering through a decrepit and bleak environment, trying not to be captured or killed by the various environmental hazards and enemies. While that should be the centerpiece, then at least 2 more blocks on your bleak platformer bingo card. Having very little idea of where you are, you then start moving to the right in typical platformer fashion, and it becomes abundantly clear that you are in a world where you are not welcome and you will die if you are not paying attention. Unfortunately, at least in my playthrough, while death wasn't a rare occurrence, it happened far more than I would have liked, and that is not entirely chalked up to me being the magnificent spaz that I am espoused to be. Limbo and Inside have a much cleaner mechanical element, considering that they only need to worry about platforming on a 2D axis, in spite of elements of the world taking place in 3D, especially on Inside. However, Little Nightmares is a full 3D platformer, meaning that not only do you have to worry about moving left and right, but what depth of the platform you need to be aware of. Navigation on a 2D plane comes with a certain ease of execution, and can make for a much cleaner design. This is the reason why 3D Sonic the Hedgehog games have rarely worked out, and considering you're always navigating from the side, I would begin to question some design elements. One design element that I would especially question is the grab function. When running, jumping, and platforming in various aspects, there will be assorted ledges, ladders, or scenery that you'll need to manually grab onto, and some of my more irritating platforming moments came from my fingers slipping off the grab button and me experiencing what I perceive to be an unfair death. It's a small complaint, but I would have appreciated an option where I could toggle the grab instead of having to hold it the entire time I'm climbing a ladder that takes 30 seconds to maneuver. Other cheap deaths came from moments in the game when I was trying to navigate around or stealth through hostile environments and was greeted with a capture or a game over that ultimately resulted in me having to trial and error a few moments just because I didn't know what the game wanted from me, and it sometimes hadn't presented all the necessary information for me to come to the right conclusion. This comes across in a couple brief puzzle segments as well. Eventually, I was able to figure out most everything, again through trial and error, but that removes a lot of the satisfaction elements of puzzle platformers like others that I've played in the past. So far, I've had almost nothing but nitpicks about the game, but if I was having a frustrating time with the mechanics and level design, then why did I finish it to completion? Well, first of all, the game is incredibly short. I want to say that my playthrough came to about 4 hours, but if I were to take a lot of those unfair deaths and retries that I had to reattempt, I'd say it cut down about a full hour of my playthrough. Not exactly the biggest bang for your buck, but I don't begrudge a game just for being short. My absolute adoration for Journey by that game company should establish that much. So what about the final elements that left me willing to see this game through all the way to completion? This is where the game shines. The atmosphere is thick and oppressive, and the storytelling through the background elements and world navigation has a lot to dive into. Now, just be aware, I'm about to delve into spoiler territory, so I'll leave you with these final words before I do so if you don't want spoilers. I give a moderate recommendation and think you should definitely give it a shot, but if you're on the fence, I completely understand if you don't want to shell out the money given its length, layout, and control issues. Spoiler territory in 3, 2, 1. From what I was able to establish, this tiny creature that you're playing as, which I can't tell if it's human or not, seems to be a source of sustenance for grotesque human-like creatures. You're ultimately on a ship or restaurant, and you work your way up from the bowels of the ship, escaping individuals that prepare your kind to be consumed. All the while, you're also finding out things about your character that you begin to question. There was one genuinely unsettling moment in the latter half of the game where the character you're controlling seems to be overcome by hunger, and a small gnome-like creature provides you with sustenance, only for the one you're controlling to lash out and menacingly devour this would-be helper instead. It gives a lot of credence that this place that you're in is a den of gluttony, depravity, and mindless consumption, and the longer that you're stuck here, the more of a corrupting effect it has on those stuck in its throngs. This is shit that I love. Atmospheric storytelling that aids your experience. Nothing is ever told to you, but everything is shown. And there are multiple instances where you remain unnerved by the events unfolding in front of you, but you can't help but want to see what comes next. While some aspects of the game seem to be trying to lean towards horror, I don't really get scared by much of the atmosphere. It unsettles, certainly. There are random and cheap jump scares that would occasionally take place, but it usually resulted in a death, so no positives there. But the imagery of the creatures that you find yourself having to navigate around and avoid give a feeling of the uncanny, an unsettling array of the mindlessly consuming, who will seek out what pleases them, even if it leads to their own destruction. Metaphors and symbology can be traced in every aspect, and I love it. So that's my experience with Little Nightmares. Again, short and occasionally mechanically frustrating, but saved by some excellent world building and atmosphere. And given that Little Nightmares 2 came out recently, I think I might have something to check out now. And to think, I was initially only going to play this thing for about an hour for the sake of some video capture.